This is Corinne.
And this is Ayani.
And you're listening to Sex, Love, Literature, a pop culture podcast where we take a semi-scholarly look at why
and how
the sex stuff in media matters.
We're continuing our 3-part miniseries on Lost You Forever by diving right into a truckload of spoilers. In honor of the reverse harem-ness of it all, we've organized our discussion around leading lady Xiaoyao and her 4 suitors.
Of course, this episode, we start with Xiaoyao herself and her many abandonment issues. Then, we get into our complicated feelings about her charming, ambitious cousin Cang Xuan and his dangerous pursuit of the throne. Finally, as a treat, mostly for me, we also talk about Xiaoyao's bratty half-sister Anyan because she's the worst, and that makes me love her more.
Don't worry, Fangfeng Bay fans. Stay tuned for part 3 of our discussion for our hot takes on the rest of the harem.
You can find us on Instagram at SexLoveLit to let us know who you think Xiaoyao should end up with. And really do, because I don't really know.
Don't forget to subscribe on any of your favorite podcast platforms.
And leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Plus, if you add a comment, it really helps other folks find SLL too.
All right, let's do it.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to SLL, Sex, Love, Literature. We are so excited to have you back here, and we are also extra excited to be getting into the spoilery version of Lost You Forever Part 1. Part 1 referring to the show itself, not to our episode. So for those of you who didn't listen to our first part, in the first episode on Lost You Forever, we covered the context, the characters, a little bit about the release context for the show. So definitely go back and listen to that. Even if you are a Lost You Forever, especially if you are a diehard Lost You Forever fan, I think you will appreciate the context, even if it does lack a little bit in spoilers.
Yeah, and there are time codes if you're like, I know who these people are, I want to skip around it.
Yes. So. It is spoiler-free-ish, but it is not analysis and reaction-free.
Yeah, we had a lot of reactions. I think it just kind of spilled out while we were talking.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of feelings about, they overflow.
Why don't we kind of speed into it? We can do a really quick lightning round of what's sparking joy and save most of the time for just getting into our feelings about Lost You Forever. I wonder if we'll get choked up like we did when we talked about Crash Landing on You many, many moons ago.
I'm going to say no, I don't think so, but I could easily be wrong.
Ooh. Now we'll have to see by the end of the episode if one of us is like...
We're going to try and make each other cry.
Honestly, you'd win, though. I'm so much easier to make cry than you are.
Very normal podcast behavior. All right, but before we get into it, while Ayani gets it together, we are going to start with a lightning round of What's Sparking Joy, which is a brief segment where we talk about something we are watching, reading, or listening to that is currently sparking joy for us. So, we are doing song version this time because we do that when we do part 2s because we're we're going to make it quick, but, Ayani, what are you listening to right now that you like?
That's a very broad question, but I picked the song Pharaohs by Subtract featuring Roses Gabor because it was a song that I was super into maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that apparently had fallen off of my favorites list somehow. I don't know if it was just in my pocket and I pushed a button and it disappeared, or if the version I have was removed from Spotify or something, but it came up on a playlist that I was listening to on a whim that was Blog Era, I think it was called. And I was like, holy fuck, I love this song. Why have I not heard it in years? And I checked my list and it wasn't there. And I was like, oh, adding this bitch back right now. So I've kind of been listening to it, making up for lost time because it makes me so happy. And I just haven't heard it in a really long time. So Pharaohs by Subtract is what is sparking a lot of joy for me right now. What about you?
For me, it is the single "You and Me" by Jennie from Blackpink. I am not hugely a K-pop person, but the one exception for that is the group Blackpink. So
It's funny you say you're not hugely a K-pop person, but that feels a little false.
okay,
Just a little.
I listen to a lot of K-pop, but I got into K-pop more the route of watching a lot of K-dramas, and because a
Mhm.
lot of like artists who like contribute to OSTs are K-pop artists, that's kind of how I got into that. But there are very few groups that I like actively follow. That's becoming less true. There are more that I like am excited when they drop an album or whatever. But Blackpink was the first one where I was like,
That's true.
ah,
Mhm.
these are my girls. Yeah, so "You and Me" by Jennie.
Now, I don't think I've listened to that one. I don't think it's on our joint playlist, so I'll search it out.
I'll send you a link. Well, there's also it's a really catchy tune, but it also has a really, really good dance choreography, and
Ooh.
there's, like the music video for it is good, but there's another version of the music video that's, like, splicing together different concert performances of it,
Ooh.
and it's, like it works really well with, like, the beat of the song, so
Hmm.
it's very visually and aesthetically interesting in addition to just being, like, a fun song.
Well, that sounds like it needs to go in the show notes. All right. Well, that has been the lightning round of what's sparking joy. Pow. That was a lightning sound if you did not know.
That's definitely how lightning sounds, not like thunder.
I hate you so much. You know what it was? It was more like a lightning McQueen sound. Ka-chow.
Ah.
Than lightning striking the ground, which would sound like thunder. You're absolutely right.
Like thunder?
But
Ooh.
sometimes we say dunder instead of thunder, and it's fine. We're human beings and we're allowed to make mistakes, which is one of my mantras, actually, that I tell for myself sometimes when I'm like in peak anxiety mode. However, my anxiety aside, let's get into Lost You Forever, though, because I have big feelings and I think we need to talk about them. To quote you in the outline, in honor of the reverse harem-ness of it all, we'll be organizing this episode around Xiaoyao's primary love interests, which is very exciting. There are a couple things that I think I want to throw in front of us going into like talk about the boys.
Mhm.
But I'm very glad that I said that on a whim and you were like, actually, no, that's genius. That's how we're organizing the episode. I appreciate you. And I just want all of the listeners to know how much I appreciate that.
Well, as a reminder, for context, in case it's been a minute since you've watched Lost You Forever, Xiaoyao is the female lead, and she has three of whom are convincing love interests.
Ah, this is why Corinne killed Fong Long in our last episode. Go back to it for context. But but the four male leads, I guess we can call them, are Cang Xuan, who is her cousin, fake brother figure.
Yes.
Tushan Jing, who is I guess we can do spoilers now because it's a spoilery episode. Who she meets first in the mortal realm,
Mhm.
and goes by the name or is named, let's say, Yishichi, who we are definitely going to get into because I love him. We also then have Zhang Liu, also known as Fangfeng Bei. Oh, I
Mhm.
can't wait to talk about him. I'm so excited. And then last but not least, we have Feng Long, who Corinne thinks is not a convincing love interest, even though I love him deeply. Love interest for me, I guess, not for Xiao Yao. But before we get into talking about the dudes, what are overall reactions now that we can talk spoiler filled? Our mouths can be free to say what we want. Like, give us your general feelings about Lost You Forever.
Oh, I love this show so much. Like, it is I mean, actually, I'm going to say, I think it is a perfect C-drama.
Whoa, perfect.
I
Oh
think
my
it's
goodness.
perfect.
Wow, okay. Why perfect?
I mean, there's nothing that I would change. Like, I think everything is very logically and clearly set out. Not that characters always behave logically, but they always behave, I think, to me, understandably based on who they
Mm,
are.
mhm.
I think the performances are all so, so good. Like, I don't think there's a weak link in the 5 mains. Like, I think they're all
Mhm.
doing excellent work. And I think another thing that really is compelling to me about it, in it being this sort of like reverse harem situation, and I kind of said this in our last episode, but like I truly like I have an idea who Xiaoyao ends up with because in part because of book spoilers. But like when
Mhm.
I am watching it, I truly do not know who I think she should end up with and like
Mhm.
who I want to be with her and who I want her to be with and who I think could make her happy. And like and I think that like being legitimately torn at least 3 ways and sometimes 4. Uh Man, I'm being so rude to Fang Long and
You
he's so
are being so
sweet.
rude. You need to
He's
leave that
so
man alone.
sweet. But like I think that's really compelling to not really know both who I think she should be with and also to not know which one I myself prefer.
Uh-huh.
I think is really hard to do.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not going to go as far as you and say that it is perfect,
I know
but I will
the
say,
pacing worked better for me than you, but go
oh,
on.
I wasn't even going to nitpick at that. I rarely will say a piece of art is perfect because I don't want to, I don't know, open it up to unfair criticism
No,
in a
that's
way.
fair.
I don't think any piece of art is perfect, though I will say that I think it does a good job. I think you're right. I think the way that the characters all interact makes a lot of sense, but is also very compelling. I think I'm compelled by all of the motivations of the individual characters. I think there were things in them, not that relatability is the most important piece of media at all, right? But I do find that there were moments where the characters were doing things that I was like, oh, yes, mood. Same.
There were a lot of things I think that were in situations that were very, to me, emotionally resonant.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm obviously not an immortal deity.
From
Like,
China.
this is not a situation that I find myself in. But I understood and empathized with, like, a lot of Zhao Yao's
Oh, for
issues.
sure.
Like, and
For sure.
the way she just couldn't trust anybody. Like, it made sense to me, like, why like, she's not always a kind or a nice person, but
Mm,
I understood the reasons why she wasn't when she wasn't.
yeah, and it made me frustrated sometimes when she wasn't in the way that I would be frustrated, I don't know, with somebody that I care about, if that makes sense. But actually,
Mhm.
since you started talking about that, why don't we dive into talking about Zhao Yao with one quick note? We're gonna save when we're going through kind of like the love interest rundown. We're gonna save our conversation of Tushan Jing till the end. But let's talk about Xiao Yao because I think she is such an interesting female lead, such an interesting hero for
Mhm.
us to follow. In part because of the fact that we start with her being a man, right? That she's been a
Mhm.
man for at least the last 30 years, right? By the start of the
Long
drama.
at least she's been a wandering or, like, a low-class physician
Yeah.
for decades.
Yeah. And
She specializes in infertility.
right, which no, I'm going to finish my thought before I come back to her infertility being interesting. And we learn very quickly that she has a very traumatic and upsetting backstory, in part because episode
Mhm.
1 kind of gives us the run of the land before we dive into the mortal realm, which is definitely a hard times in Mortal Time City style situation. Like, ugh. Um, so when we meet our heroine, she's not a heroine. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So yeah, as Corinne said, she's a fertility doctor. She does other kind of doctoring, right? If someone's like, "Oh, I broke my leg," she'll be able to deal with that. But
Yeah, if
her
someone has, like, a gash on their forehead, she knows what to do.
right, but her bread and butter is like herbs for people who are looking to get pregnant and have kids.
And she is also a poison specialist, but that's on the down low.
God. We're going to come back and talk about Zhao Yao and her need to just like poison everybody cuz like she was
Like,
doing the
baby girl,
most.
you can't just poison people because they look like somebody. Like, that's
Yeah.
not polite.
It's not appropriate behavior. But Xiao Yao is just so fascinating. And I know that's not like actually diving into the analysis, but she just is such a layered
Mhm.
character, I think, um, because she has this shape-shifting face disease disorder thing that causes her to not be able to, like, maintain control of her appearance.
Mhm.
And she was wandering in the woods for how many hundreds of
Centuries?
years? Yeah, for centuries, right? Learning how to survive off the land, befriending random snakes, and was kidnapped by a mean fox demon
And tortured.
and tortured for 30 years, I
I think it
think.
was 40.
Was it 40 years?
It was a long time.
So she just has a lot going on. But what about Xiaoyao stands out to you?
So, two main things. The first is I think the way that she like, I think what I wrote on the outline is she has more abandonment issues than you can shake a stick at.
I mean, it's accurate.
Because, like, the way that she experienced it was that her mother left and then her mother died, but her mother had
Mhm,
promised her to come back and she
mhm,
didn't. And then she was sent to Jade Mountain where her father, her Guga, her brother Cang Xuan said he would come for her. They didn't.
mhm,
Her
mhm,
grandfather was the one who sent her away, and
mhm.
so she feels completely abandoned. And then when she does try to get back to them herself, like, horrible things happen to her.
Yep.
Like, she suffers a lot. So, like, she
Yeah.
has reached this point where, like, she would rather not while both being indescribably lonely and, like, wanting companionship, also doesn't want it because she would rather leave you first.
Yep.
Because
Mhm.
if you're someone she doesn't want someone who she cares about enough to care if they leave her.
Yeah, and that leads her to, like, push a lot of people away or hold them at arm's length.
Yeah.
And in particular, what's really interesting kind of about her need for companionship, right, is that when we come into the story, when she's when Xiaoyu, she has kind of a family of mortals around her.
Mhm.
There's old Mu,
Mhm.
who is kind of like her second in command, let's say. He's an
Mhm.
older man, I wanna say maybe he looks like maybe in his 50s,
Yeah,
right?
and he, I think, deserted because he didn't wanna fight in one of the armies.
Yeah. And then she's got 2 orphans, I wanna say Freckle and
Freckle and skinny.
Skinny. Yeah, who she's picked up that she's been watching out for, who over the course of the mortal arc secures them wives, watches them grow up. Freckle has his first child. So these are people, humans that she loves, but while she is deeply invested in their feelings and their happiness, keeps them at an arm's length away from her own struggles.
Well, it's like she loves them and loves having them around, but she doesn't depend on them.
Yeah. Mhm.
She doesn't depend on them to be there if she needs them to be.
Yeah. She's okay being in a provider and protector role,
Mhm.
but does not want to be provided for or protected herself.
Mhm. I also wanna changing the subject just a little bit, but, like,
Sure,
something
rock
that
out.
I do think is also very interesting about Xiaoyao, almost from, like, a disability studies lens,
Mhm.
is the way that her, because she starts out when she's a child, she has extraordinary spirit power, which
Yes.
is like her, I don't really know how to explain spirit power.
I know how to explain it.
Okay, explain spirit power.
So, for those of you that might be familiar with like Magic the Gathering or those kinds of games, spirit power is almost like the mana that you have, your magical reserves in order to like fight and defend yourself from other people who also have magical powers and abilities. So, she starts out as being she's strong, she's got magical power, she can beat up the boys that are beating up baby Sanxuan. But once she's stripped of that, not only can she not defend herself against magical abilities, but she can't use any magical abilities. She doesn't have that reserve of mana anymore to use.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, I really like that even when they turn her back into a lady,
Mhm.
and she is quote unquote returned to, like, her more natural form, she doesn't magically get her spirit power restored to her.
Yep. Mhm.
It's essentially a kind of magical disability almost, but that will simply just always be true for her, that unless she is willing to stay on Jade Mountain and go under, like, what I read is, like, kind of like intensive treatment
Yeah.
with the
For
Queen
centuries.
Mother. That would have to be all that she devoted herself to, then she's not getting her spirit power back. Like, that's gone.
Mhm.
So she has to find other ways to defend herself. She has to find other ways to fight.
Mhm.
Like she has to learn not just learn archery, but learn a form of archery that does not depend on spirit power.
Mhm. Mhm.
And she also, that is part of why she is so proficient and chose, I think, to become so proficient in poisons, because it's
Mhm.
one of the only ways she has to defend herself.
Right. And then simultaneously, though, interestingly, it's the only way that she has to heal others around her, so she thinks,
Mm-hmm.
because she uses medicine all the time to help people when she doesn't have the spirit power to like use magic to
Mm-hmm.
heal either. So it's both her way of defending herself by being sneaky and cunning and being like, haha, I've poisoned you. But
Like, this is
she,
also how I can protect you.
right, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, she got a lot. She got a lot going on. Do we want to talk about the father parental kind of stuff that's an undercurrent of the drama right now? Or we could talk about the love bugs.
I think we talk about the love bugs when we talk about Zhang Liu. Well, also, I don't know. What do you want to do? Because the love bugs also matter for Song Xuan.
I think we start with talking about them now because I think
All
it's good to
right.
introduce them and then we can kind of get into what happens with them when we talk about my snake man.
All right.
So we've already said that Xiaoyao is kind of a master of poisons. And when when Xiaolu, she receives as a thank you this pair of poisonous bugs. So poisonous bugs are a thing in this universe. You can implant poisonous bugs into people to do all kinds of mischief and mayhem and madness. But this is a special pair of poisonous bugs because they are a pair. Wen Xiaolu does not know what makes them special, but is like, yeah, I'll feed them my blood and make them strong because that's a normal thing to do without question. And everyone actually calls her on this. Like, you just were raising them and didn't think about what they actually were. She was like, hey, sometimes you gotta poison people.
Oh, as a quick side note, something that is also interesting about Zhao Yao here that I'm pretty sure is because of the way that she lost her spirit power is
Hmm.
that her blood has sort of magical healing properties. And I think that might be because her blood was like infused. That's what happened to her spirit power.
Oh, is that what you got from it?
That's they don't ever say that, but
Oh,
like,
interest. That's not how I interpreted it.
well, however it got to be that way, her blood,
Ooh.
I mean, she obviously has like a limited supply of blood to spare, but
I
like
but you make more, you know.
she can heal like someone if they are like in dire straits, or like she uses it sometimes to heal Tushan Jing, and
Mhm.
and then Jiang Liu, when he figures out that her blood is valuable, takes advantage of that,
Yeah,
let's say.
interesting. I thought it was because of her interesting history and background.
Yeah, so I think that is also possible, and I'm not sure.
Interesting. Well, she got magical blood.
Yes, no matter the reason, she's got
Yeah.
magical blood.
Which, you know what? It didn't dawn on me until right now. She was feeding magical blood to the love bugs. So
Yep.
I think they need blood to be raised anyway, but she was feeding her like supercharged magical blood to these love bugs. So during the time in the mortal realm, she develops this somewhat friendly, somewhat antagonistic relationship with Sanjuan, who she does not know is her long lost cousin. And
Mhm.
Sanjuan doesn't know that when Xiao Liu is actually Xiao Yao in male form. And their relationship is both friendly and contentious.
Yes.
And over the course of you said it was 16 episodes, right? The 16 episode mortal arc
Yeah,
about
she turns back into Zhao Yao in, I think, episode 16 or 17.
yeah.
So that also includes a little bit of like going to Howling and
Okay.
stuff.
Okay.
So for context, where we are at the beginning, Song Juan has come and set up in Qingshui town ostensibly
Yes.
to defeat the Changrong rebels, but also he's actually looking for Zhao Yao.
Yes. And he's using a false name
Yes.
and is set up as a wine merchant. So he's selling and making mulberry wine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of his cover. That's the reason she doesn't recognize him, because also he's a grown man now and she hasn't seen him since he looked like an 8-year-old boy. But also because he's using a false name and is there under he's not there under false pretenses, but like
He's not advertising why he's
yeah.
there.
Yeah, exactly. So because they have this kind of contentious relationship that involves Anyan causes some trouble. They have some back and forth about like kidnapping and murder attempts and all that kind of
Yes,
stuff.
I love Anyan. She's the worst.
She's the worst, yes.
She's particularly the worst in the mortal
oh,
realm
she's
section.
terrible. At a particular point, I forget why Sanjuan does this to her. It was after his murder that someone tried to murder him, right?
So when
This plot is a lot.
Okay, so there is a sequence of events where Zhonglu, the nine-headed snake demon, needs something,
Yes.
and Xiaoyao agrees to help him. So she arranges for the kidnap of Anyan and then pretends to poison Anyan.
Yes.
And Anyan thinks she's poisoned because Anyan is a drama queen.
She is.
I love her so much. She's the worst.
She's yeah.
But then to try and get the supposed cure for the poison that does not exist, that Xiaoyao supposedly used on Anyan, Sangjuan orders that Xiaoyao be tortured.
Yes, and it's very bad torture. They put her hands in a box with flesh-eating maggots.
Yeah, it's
terrible.
She suffers so much.
She suffers a lot, actually. I want to finish talking about the love bugs, but then I do want to ask a question about her suffering because that was something I thought about a lot in terms of the show. But anyhow, in retaliation for that, Xiaoyao implants one of the love bugs into Sanjuan, and one into herself because there's a pair and that's how they work. And what the conceit is that anytime they feel some kind of pain, or anytime
that Xiaoyao feels pain,
yeah, then Sanjuan will feel it also. But is pain and pleasure or just pain?
Just pain.
Just pain? So that's the conceit of the love bugs, and that's something that ends up running through the show that we'll come back to, but I kind of wanted to explain it as a transition into thinking about Sanjuan. But before that,
there's a little bit of like, who has the love bug now?
Yeah,
going on.
And how does it get passed back and forth is the question too. But I know we were going to transition to Sanjuan, but I do want to think about pain in Xiaoyao because she endures a lot. There's a lot that happens to her in the mortal realm, from like the flesh-eating hand situation. Doesn't like something happen to her leg at some point?
Yeah, Zhang pushes her out of a tree.
Yeah.
pushes her off his flying bird. Like, she's just like is being hurt, all like physically hurt all the time.
Yeah, and then even after she transitions back to being Xiaoyao, when she's brought to Howling in as her male form, Anyan beats her hands, right?
Yeah, Anyan beats her hands. Sangjuan orders her leg broken when she tries to run away. Like, she suffers a lot of bodily harm.
Yeah, and then even in her female form, she
dies.
Yeah, after being stabbed a lot.
She dies a violent, torturous death, and she doesn't die for good, but spoiler episode, but
yeah. Spoilers are implicit from the beginning of this episode, right? But yeah, she dies a really violent death. So like I wasn't quite sure how I felt about the like significant amount of violence that's visited upon her.
Oh, and she's whipped like what 40 times by Zhang.
Yeah.
Like we're probably the forgetting thing. Yeah, as one shot. Like baby girl has a rough time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not gonna say how did you read the violence, but like was that something that I don't know, did it bother you? Is it something you were just like, this is run of the course? Because it seems more violent than any other show that we've watched together.
So I think it is a little bit not uncharacteristic of the Xianxia genre, and especially something that normally happens to male characters, which I think is interesting. So like the main character in the two that I'm thinking of specifically are like the main character in Love and Redemption, and then the main male character in Till the End of the Moon the shit beat out of them all the time. Like, those two are particularly infamous for the mouth bleeds situation. Uh, and I think maybe what is interesting here is that the level of violence, like, is difficult and difficult to watch, but almost like when Xiaolu breaking his leg,
Mm,
it is
San
different
Xuan,
than.
right?
Oh, I'm thinking about the difference between, like, when Xiaoyao as when Jialu falls out of the tree and
Oh,
breaks
okay.
her leg versus when Shangzhuan orders her leg broken is,
Ugh.
like,
Yeah.
is a less extreme level of violence than the kind of violence that that I've seen in, like, Love and Redemption and To the End of the Moon, where it's taken to such an
Mhm.
extreme level, but nonetheless causes Xiaoyao significant pain, is interesting that it's taking almost, like, smaller pains seriously. Like, it doesn't have to be, like, full
Mm.
body torture to be something that is painful.
Yeah.
And it's something that is, because it's both taken seriously and played as a joke.
Mhm, mhm. It's more played as a joke when she's pushed out of something, but,
Oh, yeah.
like, when her legs are physically I mean, the Sanchuan breaking her legs was taken very seriously.
Mhm. And, like, the
So,
flesh-eating bugs were also, like,
ugh.
a lot.
Yeah, that was
Uh
a lot.
But then, like, it was kind of jokey after when she's like, "Well, I refuse to take pain medication because I fucking want Song Juan to or what Juan at that point, because she doesn't know who
Yeah,
he is. I want him to feel it too. So I am going to suffer because I know he's suffering."
and she did,
But
she
she's super
suffered.
dramatic about it. She, like,
Yeah.
was, like, pacing in circles around, like, yelping. Like, she plays it for laughs too.
Right. Mhm, mhm, mhm. Huh. That's really interesting. Maybe it sounds like I just need to watch more Xianxia for context.
Yeah.
So, using him breaking her legs as a transition, suiting right along to Sanjuan, you like this man a
I do
lot.
like this man.
So he's another very interesting layered character because his goals and what he wants kind of put him at odds with what you need in order to, I don't know, have a loving, caring relationship with somebody. Is that fair to say, romantically?
Yeah. So Songjuan is a prince of Jian Kingdom and Jian Mountain, and his goal
Yeah.
is to be the king. And to be the king, he has to do a lot of shit, and it's very dangerous
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
very difficult, and also, quite frankly, and many characters say this and know this, involves him having to marry a number of women
Right.
for
Mhm.
strategic
Mhm.
reasons. He will
Mhm.
likely be nice to them and treat them fairly well, but none of them will be the first woman in his heart.
Right. Mhm. Mhm. And he won't be able to give them the kind of attention, right, that it is shown can be given in a loving, caring relationship in universe in the show. Like, I feel like this is a statement that the show is making, right?
Mhm.
And it's brought up multiple times that men who have this quest for power, again, in the context of the show, are not good husbands. So Sanjuan, his grandfather, who is also Xiao Yao's grandfather, the King of Howling, even talks about the fact that he's not the best husband and is
Well,
not the best father, even though he's trying.
and
Because yeah, go
this
ahead.
is, I think, interesting to talk about in more detail, because this is one of those instances where, so Anyan, who is Zhao Yao's younger half sister,
Right.
she wants to marry Song Xuan. Like, that's what she wants. And she has multiple people talk to her. The first one being her father, the King of Howling, saying, like, look, like, Song Juan is going to have a lot of women around him. And
Hmm.
then Anyan's response is like, well, like, you just have my mom. Like, why can't he be like you? And the King of Howling's response is like, well, I have a calm inner palace, so referring
Hmm.
to, like, the number of women he has. But the reason that I have that, is because there was a war. Like, I think there was, like, the
Right.
Five Princes War or something,
Hmm. Hmm.
where different tribes and his brothers rebelled against him for years, and that's part of why, like, he had to leave Xiaoyao on Jade Mountain for so
Right.
long.
Hmm.
And if he had been willing to marry additional women from some of the tribes, then that war might not have happened.
Right.
And the show takes that seriously.
And on top of that, what's also interesting is he was married to Xiaoyao's mother. So, like, Anyan's mother was not the only woman in
Mm-hmm.
his life. But also, really quick aside, thinking of Anyan and her mother, there is this heart-wrenching scene when Xiaoyao returns to
Oh,
Howling, when she sees Anyan's mother, and we learn that Anyan's mother looks like her mother,
and is played by the same actress.
and Xiaoyao completely loses it in the body of Wen Xiaoyu. So Anyan doesn't know what's happening. Her mother does not know what's happening. Also interesting, her mother is deaf.
Oh, yeah.
So they do sign language throughout the show as just kind of like a, this is just the way our world is. And like that, I think that was the first time the show got tears out of me because just how gut-wrenching it was because Xiao Ya has all these abandonment issues, right?
Yeah, so like at this point, the King of Howling suspects very strongly who Xiaoyao is. He's told Song Juan, who has finally fucking figured it out and feels terrible now about all the horrible things he has done to her.
Good, he should.
And Xiaoyao is intending to keep up the pretense and see how, and she intentionally baits Anyan into beating her.
Right.
But then she lets that slips when she sees this woman who she thinks is her mother.
Yep.
And isn't, and like breaks down, like
God.
screaming, like why didn't you come back for me?
Right. Why did you leave me? And Sanjuan has to like come in and like restrain her. And Anyan's like, I don't know what's happening because she's the worst. Sorry, that was just a tangent. But whenever I think about her mother,
that's I think one of the most poignant and heart-wrenching moments in the drama, because it demonstrates how deeply felt Zhao Yao's abandonment issues are, and like where they come from. And also I think circling back to Song Juan, like how much he really, really loves Zhao Yao, and how much guilt he carries for not knowing what happened to her. And also going back to like his big picture, like the reason that he wants to be the king of Xi'an, I think is in part because he wants power, but is largely because he wants power to protect the people that he loves, because he couldn't when he was young. And like there is this scene that they reference a number of times where it's like 8-year-old Sung Juan like on his knees in front of his grandfather, begging him not to send Zhao Yao away, and the grandfather being like, you do not have the power to protect her. It is not safe. I cannot keep her here.
Little Sanjuan's reaction to that is like, I need to become the king. If I become king, then I can protect everyone and we won't have to deal with this ever again.
Oh, and this is the tragedy of it. Being the kind of person who can be the king is what makes him an unsuitable partner for Zhao Yao.
Yep. And rewinding also for Anyan, even though she's dead set. So she talks to her father about it, the King of Howling, but also to Zhao Yao about this. And Zhao Yao is like, look, you can't be his one and only. You're never going to be able to be his one and only. And if you're dead set on this, like, that's something you have to understand. So you had actually mentioned this, and I know we're supposed to be talking about Sangchuan right now, but you had mentioned this, that we might see in the second half of Lost You Forever how this plays out for Anyan, and if her lack of political savvy kind of like ends up not being her downfall, but like leads to her being in some sticky, unhappy situations.
Yeah, one of the things that I am looking ahead a little bit, and I want to make sure we dwell a little bit more on Song Juan and Zhao Yao's difficult relationship. Yeah, but like he also, like, because we see him courting different women for different reasons, and the other main one that we see is, aside from the woman he actually marries,
that poor woman.
Is Jinyu, who is the princess of Chanrong, or she's descended from the Chanrong royal family,
right? But she's in the Central Plains.
Yeah, she's in the Central Plains region, which he is trying to gain power over so that he can then take over Xi'an. The political intrigue is, it's happening. It's there. Yes. But like that same conversation that like Anyan's father has with her about Sang Xuan's unsuitability as like a
Mhm.
partner is like the same conversation that Fang Long, Jinyu's brother, has with her. Like, hey,
Mhm.
like just so you like if you want him, like you will never be his one and only. Like this will
Mhm.
never be the case. And that doesn't mean that there aren't things to be gained by marrying
Right.
him,
Right.
but it is not a loving monogamous relationship.
And the way that they both reacted to it was very different and very interesting because Jinwei is more politically savvy, right?
She's doing it for it. They both Song Juan and Jinwei understand from the beginning that the part of the reason they like each other is their position.
Right. Right. And that they match each other in a way. So, kind of coming back to Sanchuan then, he has a long rocky road to get where he wants to get, from assassination attempts to dealing with his asshole 5th and 7th uncles who like want to kill him and use their sons to try to kill him multiple times or discredit him and all this kind of stuff. And do we want to talk a little bit about his journey, or do we want to get right to where he ends up by the end of season 1?
I think we can talk very briefly about the development of his relationship with Xiaoyao
Okay.
before we get to where he ends up.
Okay.
Because I think, and I kind of said this before, but like the things that make him able to protect her are the things that make him an unsuitable partner,
Yes.
specifically for Zhao Yao's issues. Because what Zhao Yao wants in a partner is someone who will never abandon her,
Mhm.
which is at this point true of Sang Xuan. But she
Yeah.
also wants someone who will have no one but her,
Mhm.
and that is
Which will not be the
impossible.
case. Yeah. Something that's interesting is that it's very easy to tell the moment when Sanjuan falls in love with Zhao Yao or starts falling for her, when she's like presented to the grander community as the princess of Howling, right? There's a shift in how he sees her when he
Hmm.
sees her made up as someone of her station for the first time. But Zhao Yao, I don't think, based on how we're seeing things, doesn't really ever treat Sung Xuan as more than her brother.
I think it's specifically it is especially clear, I should say, in the ways that Song Juan is extremely jealous whenever
Mhm.
he sees evidence of Zhao Yao's feelings for other men, or when he
Yep.
sees her like spending time with Fang Bang Bei, or even when he sees her get engaged at the end to Fang Long, who is someone which is a marriage that largely would be strategically useful to him more
Right.
than to
Mhm.
Zhao Yao. He is devastated by that. But he is
Yep.
also very aware of like physical touch, I think, with Zhao Yao
Yes.
in a way that like
Mhm.
she that is particularly where it's evident that for him it feels different than it does for Zhao Yao. Like for her
Yeah.
that's just her gugu, that's just her brother.
Yeah.
But that's not the case for him.
No, yeah, and this is one of the moments where I just wanna give props to the actor, because in a lot of ways, it's how he looks at her, and his
Mhm.
facial expressions when he's thinking about her or talking to her or talking about her are so, so telling and very well acted. Because thinking about it, I think a lot about his eyes.
Yeah, his eyes. I think especially that's one of the relationships of many in which what is not said is just as or more important than what
Oof.
is said.
Yes. Big time, because San Juan is so careful with his words and is so kind of calculated in what he lets go,
Mhm.
you know?
Do you think Zhao Yao knows that Song Juan feels that way about her? Because she understands him and she loves him, I think, more than anyone else in the world, but
Yeah.
not romantically. And she has and would kill people for him. Like she would assassinate
Oh, for
important
sure,
people. Like
for
that is
sure.
one of my favorite things about Zhao Yao, and which is when she's like, "I realize it would be difficult for you to kill grandfather. However, if the need should arise, I will do it. He didn't
I've
raise
got you
me.
covered.
I can do
Yep.
it."
Yeah, she's so ready to do a murder, honestly, like queen. But, you know, Imma be real. I think if she does know, she's not letting herself know. I
Yeah.
think it's the kind of thing that she may have pieced together, but because of the abandonment thing and because they have been looking for each other for so long, I don't think she would allow the complications of romance to even like seep into her thoughts because
Mhm.
she's perceptive. I am confident that she could figure it out, right? But she I don't think she allows herself to. I think that relationship is too precious for her to even think about him as a romantic interest.
Well, and, like, there's a particular conversation they have that makes me think she maybe doesn't that it has not even occurred to her that he would be possible
Mm,
as a romantic partner that they have, where she talks about how, like, she wouldn't I don't even remember the context of the conversation, about how, like, she wouldn't trust somebody who could be that difficult and calculating and mean and savage to
right.
other people, because she wouldn't have the confidence to feel
Yeah.
like that would never happen to her, and he just looks so hurt by
Oh, yeah,
that.
that was an arrow to the heart for him.
Because
Mhm.
that is who he is, like, he has his handful of people that he will never betray so far, but
Oh.
like, that's how he functions,
Mhm.
but the reason that he functions that way is to protect those people, so it's a catch-22.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, man. Oh, I'm really curious to see how this second season of Lost You Forever goes for San Juan because so much of this season was about getting to a place of power,
Yeah,
right?
and
And
then once it's like, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
yep. Mhm. Mhm. And there are so many people who love him, right? And are willing to lay down their lives for him. And I'm just like, oh, how many people is he going to betray? Now that, well, this is the spoiler episode. In the final episode, after a lot of intrigue and murder attempts by his evil fifth and seventh uncle, they're not really evil. They're just assholes, right? They're evil because we like San Juan,
They're
but
certainly
like
corrupt,
corrupt, yes.
and I don't think they would be good rulers.
No, I don't think so either. And after a very stressful arc about drug addiction, where like he gets addicted to a drug in order to like tank his reputation, but then is actually addicted, it's a whole situation. He actually is crowned king of Xi'an by his
Mhm.
grandfather. And everyone thought he was gonna name one of the fifth uncle, but then he was like, "Surprise, bitches! It's Sangjuan. He's your new king now. Ha ha ha!
It's
I'm a
like,
grumpy old man.
not only am I not just naming him the crown prince, he the king now. I'm abdicating.
You know, I'm putting a crown on his head and I'm walking away in my fluffy fur coat. Boom. So literally, the show ends with Sanjuan getting the thing that he's been questing for this entire time. That Xiaoyao has been having his back for. That Feng Long has had his back for. You know, he's got it, and that can only mean it's only downhill from here. Like it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows.
One of the things that I think is so interesting about that scene is, like, when he's finally crowned, he doesn't look victorious. He
He
doesn't look
does
like he
not.
won. And when he, like, watches the way they shoot that scene, because they have Song kneel in front of grandfather when he's crowned, is he looks like a kid again. It's
Hmm.
like, they shoot it looking down, the camera angle looking down
Yep.
on him, like when he was
Hmm.
8, kneeling in front of his grandfather, begging him not to send Zhao Yao away,
Yep.
then looking up at grandfather with, like, the big palace behind him,
Yep.
and then it shows him looking, like, devastated and almost like he's been abandoned again
Yep.
when grandfather walks away.
Mhm. Mhm.
He's
Mhm.
like, "You got it. Is that what you wanted?"
Yeah. That's the question, right? Is that what he actually wanted? In front of the palace that he actually had a hand in rebuilding.
Mhm. That is a big source of the power that he was able to build in the Central Plains. Like,
Yeah. So,
oh
we'll see
man.
we'll see what's coming for San Juan, but I feel like it's going to be more strife.
I am dreading a little bit. I don't know, for so I haven't read the book, and I don't know. I know some of the broad outlines of what may happen
Mm.
that I've just, like, seen spoilers of, but this is not one of them, so I don't know for sure what will happen. But, like, I am a little bit dreading the possibility of Shangzhuan betraying Zhao Yao.
Bruh. Yeah. I I think that we have to come to that though. I think there's going to have to be some tension between the two of them cuz this series, this season was about rebuilding their connection and then pledging loyalty to each other and for them being willing to do whatever it takes for one another. You know, trusting enemies, be willing to kill family members, going into the snake's den together.
Mhm.
So like they have to be put against each other in some way, shape, or form. And I
Yeah.
think I think why they're going to be put against each other is probably Xiaoyao's relationships with some of the other men in her life.
Yeah, when he actually feels like he's losing her, I think
Yeah.
is what will do it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think so another drama that a lot of people moved to watching after watching Lost You Forever that I'm reminded of and what we're thinking about is Goodbye My Princess,
You liked
where
that one.
I liked it and it also broke my heart. Uh,
Yeah.
and thinking about it still sometimes like makes me upset. But it again
Oh,
has that like crown prince character. I think the way I've described it before is like he marries someone for like political reasons and like they do fall in love and he loves her but not as much as power and not as much as his revenge. And that is their tragedy.
yeah. And I think the thing about that makes me think about Cang Xuan is that there are 3 women who love him in different ways and for different reasons. And he's not going to be able to protect them all,
Nope.
you know. I don't know quite know how hearts are going to break and whose heart and in what way. And also he has a whole wife by the end. So like
Oh
there
yeah,
are
yeah,
4
like
women.
he has a whole wife that we're not even counting.
Yeah. I feel so bad for her. She married him at a rough time.
The first time we meet her is the wedding.
Yeah, yeah.
That
Which
poor
he's like,
woman.
Xiaoyao, don't clap at my wedding. And she like turns and walks away. Oh God. Oh God. The
Well,
love
because
triangles are
like
so complicated.
he knows that like I think in the back of his head he's had like, oh well, like maybe if I don't have to marry anyone else. But once he
Mm-hmm.
like commits and is married to someone else, like Xiao Yao will
Mm-hmm.
never be with him. Like he
Nope.
knows that.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the point of no return.
And he's gonna hold her above everyone else, which poor Anyan is gonna have to deal with as well. You know, she's already kind of figured out, he loves Xiaoyao more than her.
Mm-hmm.
Though her father tries to smooth it over and was like, if someone asked you if you love mother or me more, what would you say? Right? But like, it's not the same.
Mm-mm.
It's not the same. So, ugh.
All right. Well, this has been part 1 of the spoiler discussion, which we 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 both should have known and kind of knew that this would take us a while,
So tune in to part 2
which
of
is
our
really part 3.
I was gonna say that is part 2 of the spoiler section and part 3 of the overall conversation, in which we're gonna talk about Fenglong, Jianglu, My Snake Demon Man, and Tushan Jing. And I guess any last feelings that we didn't get out, over the course of 3 episodes. But honestly, if we were gonna talk about any show for 3 episodes, I'm not surprised that it's Lost You Forever.
Mhm.
So, in the meantime, if you need to take a break between episodes, Corinne, where can they find us for like other non Lost You Forever related reasons?
You can find us at SexLoveLit on Instagram.
We'll be back. I think we're dropping these at the same time. So feel free to take a break in between or to power right on to part 3 of our Lost You Forever discussion. But this has been yet another episode of Sex Love Literature, and we'll see you again soon.
All right. Bye.
Da, da, na, 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 da, na, 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 na.